You are watching the Huddle Ninja here with the NBA crew, Chris Walder and John Henson. Let's dig into post All-Star break NBA and the landscape. Uh, what's to come a little bit, while also looking back at some betting stats from the first little bit leading into the All-Star break. And I just want to talk about the best against the spread bet, which was, there's a couple teams at the top, but Oklahoma City Thunder by percentage, 34-16-4 against the spread. So John Henson, if we expect the Oklahoma City Thunder to maybe regress a little bit with that spread record or deviate a little bit to the mean, is there a team that in your estimation either improved at the trade deadline or something like that, or a team that we should look at betting in the second half of the NBA season that could be cashing some of those bet slips?
So I was browsing, the numbers, right? At the top of it's against the spread teams for the season. You got Memphis, Cleveland, OKC, right? So those are your teams that are locked in. But interestingly enough, two teams that were in that 60% range, 59%, was the Clippers and the Raptors. Clippers could potentially have a healthy Kawhi down the stretch. And the Raptors obviously got Brandon Ingram, which on paper makes them a better team. So you might be able to down the stretch get Clippers in Toronto for maybe a little value before the books catch up to, what they have in their improvement. I mean, they're already really good teams against the spread this year already. So, depending if they factor in Ingram or the Clippers with Kawhi, I think those are two teams that could potentially prove, maybe to help you win more bets if you're talking from a betting standpoint, not a winning or losses standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, it's the Raptors formula. They've been doing
Yeah.
it since the first week of the regular season. They've been defying what the odds makers
Mhm.
perhaps thought the Raptors were going to be. They've been in close games. They've been scoring money line upsets even. But it's a great call out with the Clippers, with a healthy Kawhi coming back and a team that will be jockeying for playoff position in the West and probably winning games, keeping games close, etc.
I will say this about the Raptors, just because I am from Toronto and I do cover the team somewhat to an extent. I think that spread record is actually going to take a dip. I did see the same thing. They are near the top of the standings in that regard, but I think recently during the Brandon Ingram press conference, they did suggest that Ingram isn't going to be playing a ton over these final few months. He obviously still is coming off of that ankle injury, and I think the game plan, especially coming from Bobby Webster and Masai Ujiri, the front office, is that getting a high draft pick is still a top priority for this team. They are not trying to win games. They are not necessarily trying to be competitive. And I think that comes with playing some of these younger guys. I could see stretches where Scotty Barnes, RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, three guys who are the core of the team who have been nursing injuries throughout the course of the season, do sit for extended stretches, and you start to see some of these draft picks that they've been developing, like a Jacoby Walter, Jonathan Mogbo, Jamal Shed, get extended runs in the lineups and see what they can do for 25 to 30 minutes a night. So if that's the case, I think that's going to hurt their chances in kind of finding success on the spread. They've been a fun story so far in that regard, but the game plan now is tank and tank hard.
Well, they have been running out there with the ragtag bunch already. I mean, Scotty was out. Quickly's been so they have been kind of like playing those guys. So, definitely probably down the stretch, they're probably going to have to they're probably going to shut down those guys that are banged up for sure. But, the reason why they're probably so high is because they're outperforming expectations already with their group. So, I see it like this, Chris. If they shut down their guys, I get more points. Let's do it. They already
There
covered.
you go.
They're already covering now. So if they shut out their guys, then I think it can only bode well from a betting perspective. I don't think they win games. So
Right.
Yeah, but if there's a spread that's well into double digits, 12 and a half, 15, 16 points, it's a team that's sort of
lot
been
of points.
covering that.
They're
And I
feisty,
love
but
what
the
I
talent, we'll see.
I love what I saw from Jamal Shed when Tristan Thompson had that dunk at the buzzer going into All-Star Week.
We don't say that guy's name on this show any longer.
Let me tell you something.
Don't get me started.
Let me tell you something about that dunk right there. There's a lot behind that dunk. Maybe we'll discuss that at a later date. A lot
Noted.
behind that dunk. Raptors had a chance to potentially trade for him.
Yep.
And when I was in Cleveland, and obviously he would love to go back home, and the Raptors just kind of like don't want him. And so, yeah, that dunk was not innocent at all. So just a little inside info.
There was some intent behind
100%.
Chris, the flip side to obviously cashing bet slips on an ATS winner is, of course, looking at the fade. And Phoenix has been one of those teams, not only just a massive disappointment on the floor, but a massive one at the betting window unless you've been fading them. 19, 34, and 1 against the spread. Maybe the biggest surprise for all the wrong reasons. So, Chris, have you been fading Phoenix? And is there a team you expect to fill those shoes, to be another candidate for bettors to look at fading for the rest of the season? Or is it still just going to be the Phoenix Suns?
So I've been avoiding fading the Phoenix Suns, and I'll tell you why. It's because that roster has Kevin Durant on it, and I don't trust them whenever he's out there on the floor with Bradley Beal and Devin Booker, especially with that offense. Defensively, they're a disaster. But I always feel like when you have three options like that who can put up points in a hurry, I feel like the one time I start fading them is the one time they make me regret it. So I've kind of steered away from Phoenix from time to time. I've sprinkled a little bit on them throughout the course of the season, but it's actually never worked out in my favor. So I'm going to avoid Phoenix for now. But the team I'm going to be actively fading for the rest of the season is the Chicago Bulls. And I'm going to be fading them hard because in their last 17 games, they've only covered the spread 4 times, which is actually their record overall. They've only won 4 times during that entire stretch. So if they're not winning basketball games, they're not covering either. They have not covered the spread in a game that they have not won in the last 17 games. And in the last 5 games, most of which have come with like those new pieces ever since they traded Zach LaVine. They brought upon Kevin Herter and Zach Collins. They're giving up 3.1 points more per 100 possessions than any other team in basketball. Defensively and offensively, they are just absolutely awful. They are 26th in offense, 25th in defense over those 17 games. They have 6 guys currently averaging double figures in scoring. So they do have options, don't get me wrong, none of which are even close to what LaVine was producing. But their leading scorer over these last 5 games is Josh Giddey. And he's averaging 16 points, 16.2 points during that span. We're not confusing Josh Giddey for just like this LeBron James-esque offensive weapon. Like they have Kobe White. They're obviously playing Buzelis a lot more because he is like one of the pieces for the future. But I think Chicago is just so depleted right now. They are counting a lot on Nikola Vucevic, who's giving them next to nothing lately, and he's a complete liability defensively. I just think Chicago is an absolute disaster. They were hovering around that play-in tournament bracket, but I think they do need to start tanking akin to what Toronto should probably be doing. But yeah, I'm fading the Chicago Bulls. They just have nothing of solace to really be proud about at the moment ever since that trade.
Love that call out. And I mean, we talked about them last week, and they, with that loss to the Pistons, they ended up losing the second of back-to-backs against the Pistons as well. So they went into the break really in bad form. I think they lost 4 in a row all told going into the All-Star break. So coming out is going to be a mess as well. And like Josh Giddey can fill a box score, like, across assists, across boards. But if he's your leading scorer, you've got issues, and that is rearing its ugly head there for the Bulls. In terms of totals, overs and unders, the best over bet has been the Cleveland Cavs, 36-18 to the over. Sports books haven't really truly adjusted to Cleveland being a moneymaker for over bettors. Really a different beast when it comes to the offensive side of things. The defense was already baked in, but they are now a very, very efficient and very good offensive team. So, John, do you expect that to continue for the remainder of the season for bettors looking for an over bet, or is there somebody else in this back half of the season that you're going to target?
The reason why I think Vegas hasn't caught up is because, I mean, right now I'm looking at their over team total is 118.5. If they go much higher, I'm going betting on an NBA team every night to score over 120 points is just not going to happen, right? So they have to like kind of ceiling that, right? Like if Cleveland gets to over 121, 122, I'm probably going to probably fade them, maybe even buy up a couple points, right? Because to score 120 on any given night is tough to do. So um, I think Vegas is in a pickle right now, and it's a good angle to go Cleveland overs if you can get a good number. So, Memphis as well. Denver's up there 61% of the times over. New York is 60% over. So these are 4 teams that if you bet blindly, you're winning, you're up, right? You're up some units. So I think the trend is going to keep going for Cleveland. They're the best offense in the NBA. They also defend at a high level, so they turn you over. So um, my 2 bets, one of my bets today has to do with Cleveland. So we'll we'll stay with that.
And the last thing I want to talk about from a team perspective is the under. And I know unders aren't sexy. They aren't exciting. Nobody loves to bet an under and sit there and watch an NBA game and hope for no offense. There's a couple of really good under bets. Charlotte Hornets being one of them, 19-32-1 on the season. Maybe, Chris, a bit surprising that Charlotte does have the best under bet percentage with Orlando sort of right behind them. Considering the jockeying for playoff position down the stretch, is there another candidate in your estimation that could be cashing under bet slips, Chris?
No, beyond Charlotte, I think you just kind of took the words out of my mouth. It is undoubtedly the Orlando Magic, who ranks second from the bottom in that over-under market. Since Franz Wagner returned to the starting lineup from his oblique injury, which kept him out for an extended stretch, Orlando actually ranks dead last in offense at 106 points per 100 possessions, but not shockingly, ninth in defense. They're allowing 111.8 points per 100 possessions as well. So that equates to roughly a minus 5.8 net rating, which is 24th in the association currently during that span. And the problem is that the Magic are essentially a two-player show. If you look at their numbers during that stretch, the only other player averaging in double figures right now is Cole Anthony. So you're relying heavily on Banchero and Wagner to produce your offense. But Paolo Banchero during this stretch, he's shooting below 40% from the field. So if you're going all in on Banchero to carry the load, he can give you 23, 24, 25 points a night, but he's doing it very ineffectively. And that's rough for Orlando at the moment, who are 2-6 going under in these last 8 games. It's kind of, it takes me back to a time in the late 90s when the Chicago Bulls and the Utah Jazz were playing in the NBA finals. And I swear hitting 90 was like a godsend, because offense was few and far between. It was defense heavy. It was a physical game. Obviously, the brand of basketball was different during the 90s, but Orlando's kind of catering to that style of play lately, especially with Banchero struggling. So if you're looking for an under bet, go hard with the Orlando Magic. They can't figure it out on offense.
And it was all about milking down that shot clock as well. Shots at the end of the shot clock. So utilizing every second that they could. And yeah, getting to 90, that was a milestone. Talk to me about players, Chris. Has there been a player, that maybe in your estimation underachieved to a degree in the first part of the season that could go off in the second half? Someone that bettors should keep tabs on in specific player prop markets? I'll start with you, Chris.
So the player that I've been kind of monitoring as of late, because he's such a hot and cold weapon, and he plays on one of the most, dominant teams as of late out in the Western Conference with the Denver Nuggets. I've been keeping close tabs on Jamal Murray as of late. Obviously, he just recently set that record for the most points ever scored by a Canadian. I believe that was 55 points. And maybe it's cheating to say, because his hot streak has extended to as far back as January 14th. So he's been playing out of his mind lately. He's been averaging 25.1 points since January 14th. He's shooting 53.2% from the field, just under 38% from three-point range, and 93% from the free throw line. And I say this because in the games prior to that, he was averaging 19 points and shooting just under 44% from the field. So if this is what we're going to be, accustomed to with Murray moving forward, that bodes well for his player props, and that bodes well for the Denver Nuggets, who are trying to kind of get in contention with the Oklahoma City Thunder in the Western Conference. I don't think the Thunder are at risk of not winning the conference and not finishing in first place. But if Murray is playing like this, and we know what he's capable of in the postseason, the guy's never made an all-star team, but has legendary status by some of the moments he's come up with during the playoffs. This is really good for Denver moving forward. I'm going to be taking a couple of his scoring props in the coming weeks ahead. They're going to be playing some pretty shoddy defenses. So I hope this is going to be a consistent pattern for him. Murray has been playing really strong basketball lately.
Yeah, he went into the All-Star break on a high with that one game there that you pointed out, Chris. And yeah, sort of a weird front part of the season. And like you said, regular season in general, a dude that usually does his work in the postseason, but like you said, as Denver goes for positioning in the run into the playoffs, he could be a dude that is worth it in player prop markets. What about you, John Henson? Anybody that either disappointed you in the front part of the season and looks to have a rebound in the back half, or just somebody that you're earmarking for player prop markets in the run-in of the season?
Yeah, I got two guys. I like to look at like bottom, right? Like bottom of the market, who just has been bad, who hasn't been doing what they need to do, even from a team perspective. And we talked about the Magic, right? Terrible on offense, right? There's nowhere else to go but up. So Bankero is currently 2 points below his Franz Wagner in his prop, which is kind of weird because Bankero's the guy there, right? So I'd imagine this is his floor, and we love a good floor, right? If Bankero's floor is 23, 24 points, I think in the second half of the season, that's gonna go up. He's gonna start, he's getting healthier, right? He's coming back from injury. So I think him being below Wagner in scoring is criminal. So that's something maybe to look at from a better perspective. And then the next guy I have is Jimmy Butler. I think it was in one of my bets last week at night, like Jimmy Butler 19 and a half. Like, I don't think we'll see that. I think they'll increase it a couple more points, but I think he's also at the floor as well of what he could be potentially with the Golden State Warriors. So those are two guys I have my eye on to just watch their scoring and seeing what they do because this is an Orlando Magic team that was humming before he got hurt, and he had 50 points and he was scoring, way more than he is now. So don't know if that's just rhythm, sitting out, getting, to adjust it to the game again, but if I can get Bankero at 24 and a half points and you think he's going to score below Wagner for the rest of the season, I would love that.